single piece of legislation that determines efficiency in other legislations, the Appropriation Act, known to many as the budget, annually serves as the oil in the wheel of government and its agencies to deliver the collective needs of the citizenry. In this edition of the program, we focus on the budget, the budgetary process, and the role of citizens in all of it. I am Omotola Mojola, and this is Dateline 360. Welcome. So in real terms, what is a budget and what is its significance? Economic experts say an open budget that allows for transparency through the entire process and encourages citizens' participation goes a long way in achieving implementation goals. Muplan Dakok opens the program with education about the budget, its processes and expectations.
President Tinubu presented the 2024 federal budget proposals to the National Assembly in Abuja, of which defense and internal security, local job creation, and macroeconomic stability topped the list. The proposed budget expects oil price benchmark of more than $73 a barrel, oil production at 1.78 million barrels per day, with the naira at 700 naira to a dollar, while GDP growth rate is expected to rise to 3.76%.
The non-debt recurrent expenditure is 9.92 trillion naira, while debt service is projected downward to be 8.25 trillion naira, and capital expenditure is 8.7 trillion naira.
The budget has been one of the most important parts of building the country, and government expenditure has been increasing over the years with the hope that increased budget allocations will give the much-needed economic development.
The first function of a budget as a law is to determine the extent of intervention of a government at whatever tier of governance. And a 27 trillion budget, even if it's shared at an average, I can't get the calculation now, divided amongst 200 and something million Nigerians, will not come up to 20,000 or so per head, So the idea, what struck me in the presentation of the president is that the budget would facilitate macroeconomic stability.
But Nigerians are more concerned about the effectiveness of the budget than its size, with a total aggregate projection of 27.5 trillion naira for 2024, with a borrowing plan of 7.8 trillion naira to raise capital. Experts lament rising debt and cost of governance.
If we even start by returning our dysfunctional, abandoned facilities, our research institutes, being able to tie them to, clear off-taker support programs, you will find out that Nigeria, can make a lot of this money. So it does not have to be, taxing people that are already.
I think if there's sincerity on the part of governance, they can deliver the budget. And my hope is that if we can also reduce on the loan we've been collecting from the international organizations, if we can reduce on it and look inward.
Experts are also of the opinion that states and local governments must play their role of driving economic growth at the subnational level.
This of the center is very critical in stabilizing or in bringing the good input from the state level. However, we should be expecting a certain level of commitment by the Honorable Minister in trying to establish the economic environment, the risks involved, security. We are expecting security. However, what I had wanted to be present to highlight more is for us to know the head counts, the population of the state, because most of the statistics revealing the situation of the economy from the MBS is related to activities of consumers, that the citizen within the economy. And if we can get the right population, it will help the statistic, and it will help the implementation of these policies, and at the same time it will help state.
The budget is said to be the second most important thing after the Constitution, and Nigerians are expectant that when the 2024 budget is passed into law, it will bring about economic growth of 3.76%. For Dateline 360, Uplan, Napa.
The national budget, as critical as it is to the fiscal planning of nations and governments, is also important for the annual projection of corporate organizations and business-minded individuals alike, depending on sector of enterprise and amount allocated to engender economic prosperity in the fiscal year. President Tinubu recently presented the 2024 budget estimate to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly has begun consideration of this all-important bill. Correspondent Metari Igbe takes us through the processes leading to the passage of the appropriation bill.
An appropriation bill, also known as money bill, is a proposal of budgetary estimates for a particular fiscal year. Section 80 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, empowers the National Assembly to authorize the expenditure of government funds proposed in the appropriation bill when it is passed into law. The annual budget proposal is preceded by the National Assembly's approval of the Fiscal Strategy Paper and the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework, MTEF, which is a rolling 3-year expenditure plan that sets out the medium-term expenditure priorities and constraints against which sector plans can be developed. Guided by the provisions of Section 80 to 84 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, as well as the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007, the executive and legislature have shared responsibilities in the consideration and eventual passage of the appropriation bill. The presentation of the 2024 budget estimates of 27.5 trillion naira by President Bola Tinubu before a joint session of the National Assembly is considered to be the first reading of the appropriation bill. Thereafter, lawmakers in both chambers of the National Assembly subjected the general principles of the 2024 budget proposal to an exhaustive debate. The appropriation bill passed second reading at this stage and referred to the appropriation committees of both the Senate and House of Representatives for meticulous scrutiny of resource allocation to various sectors. This is when ministries, departments, and agencies of government appear before the standing committees that now serve as subcommittees to the appropriation committees of both chambers to defend their budget proposal for the following year. This time around, both chambers have resolved to hold joint committee sessions to speed up the process.
If the committees are satisfied with the extent of defense, fine. If they are not, they will raise questions. If the questions are answered adequately, fine. If they are not answered, that's where the committee will say, no, you don't need so amount in this subhead. It will be more needed in another subhead. For example, there was one budget hearing where a head of agency appeared before a committee, which I belong to, Committee on Water Resources. They submitted a request for 20 laptops, 20 printers, under the same allocation was made the previous year. Are you telling me that the laptops that were given to you last year have expired, or what? We discuss, so he couldn't answer. So that's the work of the, so you take away one suggestion, you cannot be convinced. If a head of agency or minister or any of this cannot convince the House committee, relevant committee, as to the necessity of leaving that sum of money in a subhead, then it is removed and placed in an appropriate subhead.
At this stage, there is public participation in the budgetary process to enable citizens have inputs in the appropriation bill through public hearings by the committees. The 10th Assembly revived citizens' participation in the budget by convening a citizens' town hall meeting on the 2024 budget and appropriation process in Abuja. Edwin Onoja, a lawyer who works with the Partnership to Engage, Reform and Learn, PEL, tells me that such citizens' engagement enhances the credibility of the budget process.
The Ninth National Assembly was able to only do that once during its life span, and that was in 2019 for the 2020 budget. So since then, the process kind of ceased, and we're kind of having that now for the first time in the last 3 years. It's important that, going forward, the executive and then will make deliberate efforts at ensuring that citizens are not just adequately consulted, but given that room to be able to make inputs into the national budget at the point of preparation.
How does it impact on the ordinary Nigerian? That's what we want to see come into this budget. How does it impact? It's not just about rolling them out, but what are the avenues that government are using to be able to reach the ordinary Nigerian that needs this intervention?
After budget defense by the MDAs, the appropriation committees of both chambers collate recommendations by standing committees and present a harmonized draft of the budget to plenary and the Committee on Supply for clause-by-clause consideration before progressing to third reading and final passage by the House of Representatives and the Senate. After passage of the budget, clean copies are forwarded to the President for assent. As soon as the President gives his assent, the appropriation becomes law. As it stands, the executive and the legislature have the remaining days of 2023 to pass and give assent to the 2024 appropriation bill if the January to December budget cycle is to be sustained.
Mitaire Ikben for Dateline 360.
From Gombe, Abbas Meikano brings us the view of economic experts on the 2024 budget estimate as presented by the President.
The national and state budget estimates remain two critical economic instruments that provide new lease of hope to Nigerians. They give the idea and direction of government plans for investment of resources in various sectors of national development.
Budget presentation is supposed to be a very critical ritual that holds a lot, that promises members of the society a great deal to be delivered in the years ahead. But unfortunately, in particular reference to the Nigerian situation, you see, citizens really pay attention because over the years, it is no more than a ritual that it is.
But the moment the presentation is done, speculators are on it. They do their analysis. Businesses are on it. What do they anticipate? What is good for them? What is bad for them next year? And they will know and what to do and what steps to take. So it is very, very important. Before even approval of the National Assembly, they know the direction. Once people know, especially businessmen know what is going to happen, they will know what steps to take. In short, investment will flow into a particular direction once statements are made.
From the presentation point of view, you will look at it as very realistic. But when it comes to implementation, there are so many loopholes which arises from the policy point of view and from the implementation point of view.
Despite being public sector-driven budget proposals in the case of developing countries, Nigeria inclusive, the private sector also take a cue from the policy statements contained in the budget estimate to plan some of its activities of the incoming year. Level of implementation and the engagement of public views and interests in the preparation of this budget estimate always determine the popularity and the acceptance of the document in the public domain.
The budget is not just about government coming up with proposals. Budget is for the people, and then what people should stand to gain, because it's not a case of where you provide primary schools where primary healthcare is needed. So you have to put in citizen engagement in every budget. So that's why it has always been a practice at the end of every year, before the budget proposal by the executive, when bilateral has been done between ministries and MD, specifically budget ministry and then other MDAs, His Excellency would ask that all citizens present themselves in a town hall meeting, which His Excellency has always been attendance in.
I don't think implementation is done the way it's supposed to. The budget, wonderful, but the implementation, as far as I'm concerned, zero.
In the coming weeks, both the national and the state legislatures will obviously become busy receiving officials of various government ministries and departments to defend the figures allocated to them before the parliamentarians. In Gombe, Abbas Mekano reporting for Deadline 360.
Now, citizens' participation in the budgetary process is a critical component necessary for effective service delivery and good governance. Budgetary Away examines the level of citizens' participation in the budgetary preparation of Bayelsa State, its attendant effects on the economy of the state, and effective implementation of budget estimates.
Governments in developing countries are increasingly becoming aware that citizens' input are imperative to the development of the state, as they want to be involved in the governance of the state by participating in the budgetary process, considering the fact that failure of government policies negatively impact on the citizens. In Bayelsa State, for instance, the budgetary process cannot be completely described as one which has attained maximum citizens' engagement level before presentation to the State House of Assembly and possible passage. This is because of the rising level of lack of citizens' interest in governance and low stakeholders' engagement in the budgetary process.
Usually they invite organizations from different levels, the skilled, the semi-skilled, and the unskilled, and of course the ordinary man. Those are the yardstick with which these professional bodies on one divide, skilled associations on one divide, semi-skilled organizations on one divide, unskilled organizations on the other divide. You see market union leaders, and sometimes when they get this information to come make their inputs to the budget, they say they see it as a waste of time.
How are we engaged in terms of preparing the budget? Was there anything like needs assessments being carried out, or any town hall meeting where the people also make their inputs in the appropriation of the state? I want to say the answer is no.
How many persons in Bayelsa are aware that budget for 2024 has been passed? Are there people that will say, we want the budget to look at this road that leads to our community? What is the dividends of democracy that they are receiving? Everybody should feel it.
Cresting budget of sustainable and shared prosperity, Bayelsa State Governor Senator Doye Diri recently presented a 480.9 billion naira 2024 appropriation bill to the State House of Assembly.
The 2024 budget proposal is therefore consistent with the assumptions as contained in your approval of the MPF and the FSP.
We will always work with you, strike compromise on issues of national and state interest.
Some of the projects I heard people talk about and say these projects should be carried out, even the papers passed around, and we are noticing most of those projects are being carried out in the state, and I believe this next budget will also do same.
The budget, prepared with the 2022 and 2025 medium-term expenditure framework, will rely solely on the state's projected revenue sources, which includes the statutory allocation, 13% derivation, internally generated revenue, value-added tax, capital receipts, loans, and grants. And 27 years after the creation of Bayelsa State, the annual budget is still 50% dependent on federal allocation. These stakeholders say it's not good enough.
Whatever comes from the center will remain limited, and that we have potentials to expand our sources of income. I think that's one great undoing of our state. I think it's beyond 50%, because even the taxes are going to be termed internally generated income. It's connected to what comes from the center. So it's virtually center-based financing of the state, especially when you look at the fact that we have at our disposal, resources in diverse forms and nature.
Going forward, Bayelsans are expectant that the government will adopt a more robust engagement platform where the yearnings and the needs of the people will be captured in the budget. I am Budgetary Awe reporting for Dateline 360.
In Ogun State, Yemi Dalemo reports that the involvement of citizens in the decision-making process, particularly government programs and policies, is remarkable to engender development across the state. His inquisition reveals that citizens are actively engaged in the budget preparation process.
The task of preparing the Ogun State budget lies with the Ministry of Finance, with input from other ministries, agencies and departments of government. Aside from financing new and existing programs, the budget is the prime instrument for implementing fiscal policy.
In Ogun State, the culture of organizing town halls meeting across the 3 senatorial districts of the state is aimed at getting the input of the people and relevant stakeholders into the budget so that the citizens can be involved in matters that concerns them and government can know areas of focus in the budget.
The town hall meeting allows for participatory and inclusiveness, which is a key component of the Ogun State budget preparation process, which aligns with goals 10 and 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals.
A town hall meeting for people to come out and tell us what they believe should be done. And that is exactly what Ogun State did.
This citizen engagement is to find out what each of the zones, each of the need at a particular time. You will find out that if you look at this budget, the governor spoke about Atondusada. That was part of those things. The governor spoke about Abuja, Ota. Those are what the citizens there spoke about.
Yeah, the governor tried as much as possible to include very important infrastructural development from Ikene into this budget.
Governor Dapo Abiodun, while presenting the state's 2024 appropriation bill of 703.028 billion naira before the State House of Assembly in Abeokuta, notes that the budget will be financed with both the federal allocation and the state's estimated GDP of 7.3 trillion naira, projected GDP rate of 3.30% and the inflation rate of 24.4%.
What we normally do in Ogun State House of Assembly is to go for the trade, so that each and every one of us will be briefed properly by the Commissioner for Finance, Commissioner for Budget of the state, and the Accountant General of the state. Thereafter, we now move to budget defense by the MDS. After budget defense, we go for the committee will sit on it properly, and after that, we have the third reading and the passage.
For the history of Ogun State, I've never seen the budget performed at 100%. But once you have a budget that performed 75–80%, I think they have done well. With the internally generated revenue increasing all the time, you can be able to do that to achieve a balanced budget.
In the 2024 budget of Ogun State, 209.9 billion naira is earmarked for infrastructural development, representing 30% of the total budget, while education is next with 109.2 billion naira, representing 16% of the budget. In Abeokuta, Yemi Dalemo for Dateline 360.
That is Dateline 360 for this week. Keep a date with us next week as we explore another interesting issue. I'm Omotola Omojala, and on behalf of the production crew, I thank you for your time. May God bless Nigeria.